Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's MIPS APM Scoring Standard Overview webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to provide an overview of Merit-Based Incentive Payment System Alternative Payment Models, or MIPS APMs, a type of APM in the Quality Payment Program. Now, I will turn it over to Adam Richards, Health Insurance Specialist in the Center for Clinical Standards and Quality at CMS. Please go ahead.
All right, well, thank you and greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining our discussion today on MIPS APMs and the APM scoring standard. It looks like we've got a great turnout so far, which I believe indicates a desire to learn more about this aspect of the quality payment program. I will also flag that this webinar is part of our comprehensive series on APMs that we are beginning today with this very webinar. We have another few webinars planned on advanced APMs and the all-payer combination option, and we will have details about those events shortly, but I do recommend, if you haven't done so already, to certainly sign up for our Quality Payment Program listserv on qpp.cms.gov. That way you'll have all the information on our upcoming dates. But our focus today is on MIPS APMs, and we have quite a bit of ground to cover. So we're going to do our best to break down the concepts as best as we can, because we have quite a few clinicians and non-clinicians that are newer to the program in 2019 and are really looking for a jumping-off point. I will say, if you weren't able to join us for our APMs 101 webinar back in February, I highly recommend viewing that recording, which is located in the webinar library on qpp.cms.gov to help with some of the basic backgrounds, terms, etc., some of the things that you may see today. We'll cover a little bit of this today, but certainly not in great depth, because we want to spend our time on MIPS APMs. And as always, we will post the recording, the transcript, and the slide deck in our webinar library in about 2-ish weeks. Again, we'll let you all know via the listserv. All right, so let's charge on to the next slide. Just to kind of talk a little bit about where we're going to go with our call today, we'll start with a quick overview of key terms. Then we're going to jump into just a basic overview of alternative payment models, just to set a little bit of context for our discussion. Dive into a little more information on advanced APMs, and then we're going to get into the basic of our the basis of our discussion today, talking about the basics of MIPS APMs, talk a little bit about the MIPS APM scoring standard, and certainly the participation status for MIPS APMs, and looking up your information in our participation lookup tool. Of course, we will end with a review of our resources and free technical assistance that's available, and as time allows at the end, we'll have a question and answer session to address some of those burning questions that you may have. Okay, so moving forward. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on this section. If we go to the next slide, again, these are relevant terms to the Advanced Alternative Payment Model track, but just alternative payment models in general. You see, if you're on our other calls related to APMs or even our MIPS calls, you see that we often use NPI, National Provider Identifier, as well as Taxpayer Identification Number, NPI and TIN, as we're talking through some of this information. Highly recommend, again, we won't go through these terms today, but these are available on the Quality Payment Program website, qpp.cms.gov, from our previous webinar. So if you are interested in diving into some of these terms, please feel free to do so. If we move on to the next slide, I think we also have a good... There we go, thank you. Just a couple additional terms. Again, these are more for your awareness. These are some of the things that you may want to familiarize yourself with, certainly as you're working through, if you are part of an APM or an advanced APM, as you're working through your models, but also as you're beginning to think about potentially transitioning over into an APM or an advanced APM. These are certainly good terms to familiarize yourself with moving forward. Okay, if we move on to the next slide. Again, some more good, relevant financial terms, focusing more on things like full capitation, total risk, marginal risk. Again, we won't go through these today, but certainly encourage you to take a look at these as your time allows. Okay, moving on. So at this point, I'm going to introduce Dr. Corey Henderson to lead us through a discussion on the basics of alternative payment models. Corey?
Hello, everyone. We're going to get through this section because I know we're here to learn about MIPS APM. So before I introduce my teammate and partner, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, this is just a great introduction for anyone who's new to alternative payment models. Alternative payment models are really just a new approach that we use for paying for medical care through Medicare that incentivizes quality and value. Without getting into the logistics of how we came to this policy, there are certain things that MACRA defines as an APM. They are the CMS Innovation Center that does not include the Healthcare Innovation Awards, or what we would call HICIA, the Shared Savings Program, listed here as the Medicare Shared Savings Program, demonstrations under the Healthcare Quality Demonstration Program, and then also demonstrations required by federal law, all qualify as APMs. Next slide. Here again, we talk about APMs from a definition perspective. There are three main ways that you want to look at APMs as a subset of quality and value. One, that we pay, and it's an approach that really looks at incentives for clinicians to provide high quality and cost-efficient care. In addition to that, we look at how we pay for specific conditions, care episodes, and also populations, not just payment, but also the work that you do as a clinician. And then finally, we offer significant opportunities for eligible clinicians who may not be ready to participate in the subset of advanced APMs, but are looking for the quality, cost-efficient care, and also the different areas that I just spoke about, the care episode, population, and conditions. Next slide, please. Here, going back to the incentives, there are 4 different areas that we want to look at here. If you're not in an alternative payment model, you will fall under the MIPS adjustments. You can learn more about that by looking at our MIPS slides or going to the webinars under the APM website or the website for Quality Payment Program, which is qpp.cms.gov/webinars. And then you can also go to our resource library. But we're going to focus here on alternative payment models. In an APM, or the alternative payment model, you can get your MIPS adjustment plus specific rewards for participation. In the MIPS APM, you'll be eligible for the APM scoring standard towards your MIPS adjustments, and you'll get the APM-specific rewards. And then in the advanced APM, you are eligible for the APM-specific rewards, and in addition to that, you're also, if you're a qualified APM participant, or what we call a QP, the 5% lump sum bonus. Next slide, please. This is just an illustrative way of looking at the comprehensive list of APMs. We like to just share this with you because when you go to the comprehensive list of APMs on the resource library, it's important to note that the columns at the top define what information you're looking at. So the first column is your alternative payment model. That is just the name by which the practices or the entities, the APM entities participate under. So the first line, the comprehensive ESRD care model, that is the name of the overall model that does work in ESRD care. The next column is your MIPS APM under the APM scoring standard, and that is where we make a judgment call based on policy and based on the model itself, whether or not this is a MIPS APM that is eligible for the APM scoring standard. The next column would be whether or not you are a medical home model. The column after that is the use of CERT criterion, means that this model does have CERT, or the Certified EHR Technology criterion, as part of the model. The quality measures criterion, which again here we're looking at whether or not you meet the quality measures required for the model itself to fit into this category. The financial risk criterion, which has to do with the risk you take on, and then the advanced APM. So just sticking with this slide very quickly, if you go to the second line there that says Comprehensive Primary Care Plus, or CBC Plus model, you'll note that it is a MIPS APM under the APM scoring standard, which means participants get the benefit of the APM scoring standard. It is considered a medical home model. It does require use of CERT criterion. It does require quality measures criterion, and it does fit the financial risk criterion. And because it fits the 4 categories, then it is considered an advanced APM. And when we talk about the categories, you'll learn a little bit more about that later. Next slide, please. So here you can find more information by going also to our website. That is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation Center website, and that is just innovation.cms.gov. So the 2 websites we've named today are qpp.cms.gov and innovation.cms.gov. QPP standing for Quality Payment Program. Next slide, please. And let's go to the advanced APMs. Next slide, please. So here we talk a little bit about the subsection that we talked about earlier, of the subset of APMs that we call advanced APMs. Here, we're going to define again that advanced APMs, they receive a greater reward for taking on some risk related to their patient outcomes. That's where we get to the reporting of quality and other initiatives related to risk. Here, the advanced APM participant is eligible for the advanced APM specific reward and the 5% lump sum bonus if they reach the QP, which means that they've done a sufficient degree of work or participation in their advanced APM. Next slide, please. I'm going to define for you what the advanced APM qualifications are. First, by law, we require that the participants in the advanced APM use certified EHR technology. Second, that it provides payment for covered professional services based on quality measures comparable to those used in the MIPS quality performance category. And thirdly, either is a medical home model expanded under CMS Innovation Center authority or requires participants to bear more than nominal amounts of financial risk. Next slide. This is a list of some of the advanced APMs for 2019. We will be updating the comprehensive list of APMs as we get new models online, and we always update that so that we can give you as much information as possible. I'm not going to run through this list for you. As Adam said earlier, these slides will be available for you to review, but you can also find this again on the comprehensive list of APMs. Next slide. Here again, we talk about the QP. What is a QP? It's a qualifying APM participant. The QP must be in an advanced APM. In addition to that, the QP receives many benefits. One, they're excluded from MIPS reporting. A lot of people say it's a burden reduction. For some, they may want that, but you're doing the work already in your advanced APM, so we're not going to require you to do it twice. Two, you receive a 5% lump sum bonus. The benefit of that is, again, it's a payment for the work that you do. And thirdly, you receive a higher physician fee schedule update starting in 2026. Next slide. Here again, we talk a little bit about what it means to be a QP. For a QP, we talk about threshold scores. Threshold scores relate to the work that you do or the significant participation in your advanced APM. Well, what does it mean to be significant? Well, when we talk about payments through your advanced APM, within that advanced APM for 2019, you must have 50% of your payments coming through the work that you're doing in your advanced APM. Again, this is all scored at an entity level, but we also do other calculations to try to make sure we capture as much about you as possible. The other way to get QP status is looking at patient count. Now, this is a or statement, so you don't have to have payment and patient. You just need to meet one or the other. For 2019, the percentage of patients through the advanced APM that you must be seeing is 35%. And then the numbers progress to get you to a point that we are then focusing on advanced APMs as we move this policy forward. Next slide, please. Here again is a slide. The graphic really tells it all, but we want to make sure it's clear. The first section here with the dotted lines around it is your QP performance period. This is the performance period by which you are actually participating in the advanced APM. So that is where you're actually performing the work to be determined. Second, we have the incentive-based payment period. Here, you look at the incentive determination. What we're going to do is we're going to add up your payments for Part B professional services furnished by your QP, or meaning that you've done the work, you've been designated as a qualifying APM participant during the time period of January 1st to August 31st. Once we do that, then we're going to take you to the payment year. That payment year would be the 5% lump sum payment made, excluded from your MIPS adjustment. So let's go back really quickly. The QP performance period will be 2017. What did we do? We looked at, hey, in 2017, January 1 to August 31st, you did a significant amount of work and you either met your payments or patient counts. At that payment or patient count, we were able to determine that you are a qualifying APM participant. At that point, January 1, 2018, we began to calculate your base payment period, your incentive payment base period. At that time, we calculate your payments that we're going to take the 5% lump sum from. The payment year would be 2019 that we would base the 5% lump sum payment off of. Again, this is all done at the entity level first and initially, and we are looking at not only the 5%, but we're also looking at the 10, which is how you bill, because the billing is done through an organization at that point. Next slide, please. So I hope that I've given you enough foundation to build off of. I'm going to pass it over to my team member and newest member here on our engagement team, and his name is Trevi.
Thanks, Corey. We're going to move on from advanced alternative payment models here and jump into MIPS APMs. So, all right. So, as we discussed earlier, there are some important relevant MIPS APM terms, and I'll dive into them fairly detailed level here because they are important for the next couple slides. So, the largest portion of our MIPS APM participants take part in the Shared Savings Program. And hopefully for this group, the term accountable care organization is quite familiar to them. The ACO is a network of providers and hospitals that come together to improve care coordination and the quality of the care that they deliver. The next term on the slide here is MIPS APM entity. So an alternative payment model entity, in this case, we prefer the shorthand APM entity. It's just easier to say, but that entity participates in an alternative payment model through either a participation agreement or a regulation, or through a direct non-Medicare agreement. So examples of APM entities would be an ACO, a group participating practice in BPCI, advanced, or a CPC practice, CPC plus practice. I should point out that in some models, the participation of an APM entity may be elective down to the individual provider, and then in other models, we may require full participation of all clinicians billing through a TIN. So you'll see later on in later slides, we refer to that as full TIN reporting. And then finally, the last term here on the slide is APM scoring standard, which the APM scoring standard is a specific rubric for scoring under MIPS performance for APM entities, and the scoring aligns the MIPS payment model requirements with MIPS reporting itself, and we've adjusted the category weights to reflect that alignment. Next slide, please. All right, so what are MIPS APMs? As you can see by the overlapping imbricated circles here, MIPS APMs are basically a subset of alternative payment models. And these MIPS APMs hold their participants accountable for the cost and quality of care provided to Medicare beneficiaries. They must meet specific requirements that we'll see in the next slide. So actually we could advance right to that next slide. So the four criteria that MIPS APMs need to meet in order to be determined as MIPS APMs, the first is that they must participate under an agreement with CMS or through regulation. Second, MIPS APMs must include one or more MIPS eligible clinicians on their participation list. Thirdly, MIPS APMs must base their payment structure on quality measures or on cost and utilization. And on cost and utilization, sorry. And then finally, we also require that the quality measures under the APM be tied to a performance period with the first day being January 1st. Next slide, please. All right, so in this slide, we have a list of our MIPS APMs for 2019. We update this list regularly, and it's on our qpp.cms.gov site. Next slide, please. So now we'll jump into the actual scoring standard for MIPS APMs. This is the interesting part, I think. So we'll move quickly past this slide, but basically we wanted to clarify for performance year 2019 in the final rule, we updated some of the wording just to reflect the intent is to include models that incentivize efficient, high-quality care. So next slide, please. So in this slide, you can see that in 2017 and 18 rule, we had dictated that the shared saving program participants would report promoting interoperability at the TIN level for final scoring. And while they may continue to report promoting interoperability at the TIN level, we've updated our language for year 3, performance year 2019, to allow clinicians to report both individual and TIN level promoting interoperability scores. And actually, I think one of the things we're seeing in the chat right now is a lot of questions about how SSP members report promoting interoperability. So either I'll address that more in the slides that follow, or one of my colleagues will follow up. All right, next slide. So this slide depicts our APM scoring standard snapshot dates. So there are 3 that start off the year that are also QP determination dates. And then a 4th snapshot date that we added for December 31st for those full TIN, as I spoke to before, those full TIN MIPS APMs, so that we capture everyone that participates in your APM. And basically what we do on these snapshots is we look at the participation list for your APM, and if you're a provider participating in an APM at any one of these dates, you are included if you're captured in a snapshot. And I think that's fairly straightforward. So next slide. All right. So the APM scoring standard low volume threshold. So this low volume threshold applies to MIPS eligible clinicians in MIPS APM. The low volume threshold is calculated at the APM entity level. I think that's really important. So even if you're a provider in a TIN that's below the low volume threshold, you are subject to MIPS if the APM is eligible. So we've laid this out to be more clear in 2 scenarios at the bottom of the slide. The first scenario is that the APM entity is required to participate in MIPS because the APM entity exceeds the low volume threshold. So what does that mean? That means that all the practitioners, both TINs and solo eligible clinicians participating in that APM entity must report for MIPS. In the second scenario, the APM entity is exempt from MIPS because it falls below the low volume threshold at an entity level. So what does that mean? It means that all of the TINs and group practitioners participating in that APM entity are exempt from MIPS and do not need to report for MIPS. So it's sort of an all or nothing here. It's a binary entity level threshold. Next slide, please. All right. Next, we'll discuss the category weights for MIPS APM scoring standard. The performance category weights are evident in the slide: 50% for quality, 30% for promoting interoperability, 20% for improvement activities, and 0 for cost. I'll jump into how each of these categories, a little more about how these categories are scored in following slides. Next slide. So for quality, as I said before, the quality category weight is weighted at 50% for the final score. APM participants that report via the web interface will receive their quality score based on that mechanism. And then additionally, it's important to remember that quality measures are scored against the MIPS APM benchmarks. Next slide. All right. So for cost, MIPS APM scoring standard reweights the cost category into the quality category, promoting interoperability and improvement activities. It sort of distributes itself evenly into those 3, and there's no additional reporting necessary for the cost category. Next slide. For improvement activities, by participating in a MIPS APM, we actually give you full credit for this category, both for performance year 2018 and performance year 2019. So you'll receive the maximum points for this category that, again, is weighted at 20%. Next slide. So this is where I think all the questions are coming from. So for promoting interoperability, the category itself is weighted at 30%, and data can be reported via attestation, QCDR, qualified registry, or directly through your CERT, or through the CMS web interface. So MIPS-eligible clinicians can report at the individual or TIN level for promoting interoperability, and eligible clinicians can submit their promoting interoperability. I'm repeating myself there. So I think one of the major questions is around the shared savings program and promoting interoperability, because in the past, the shared savings program has included the measure ACO 11, which used your promoting interoperability score to be calculated. That's no longer a requirement. So if you're participating and you are a QP, you won't receive credit for promoting interoperability. But if you are in a shared savings program and you have providers that are subject to the MIPS APM scoring standard, then your promoting interoperability standard submission will be scored. I don't know if some of my colleagues in the room want to clarify that statement. But in the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how the roll-up for that score works, and so that may also help clarify things. Next slide. All right, so you've asked what happens if a clinician participates in 2 or more MIPS APMs. The answer to this question is that CMS will take the highest final score for each of for all of the MIPS APMs that you participate in, and the clinician will be given that highest score, with one exception. And again, those scores are calculated at the APM entity level, with one exception, and that's that if a clinician participates in both the Shared Savings Program and CPC Plus, they'll receive their Shared Savings Program score rather than their CPC Plus score. Next slide. All right, so I've come to the end of my set of slides, and I'll be handing things off to my colleague Corey again, who will take you through the MIPS participation status lookup. If at the end we still have questions about promoting interoperability, then we'll come back to these slides and hopefully we can clarify things for everybody.
Thank you, guys. Next slide, please. All right, so I think it's important to hear that we take a moment just to talk a little bit about what you can learn about your practice and the opportunity for you to log on to our website, which is qpp.cms.gov. When you do, there are 2 different options by which you can find out about your practice and the clinicians in your practice. The first one is that you don't have to log in. That is allowing for you just to enter an MPI, and you'll learn about the different participation status based on what MPI you enter. So after you enter an MPI, the clinician or the submitter, whomever is logging in, the surrogate, will see 2 different things. One, reporting requirements overview that tells you whether or not you're in MIPS. And 2, we also do a check on all the data we have about you to tell you about your APM requirements. And we don't specifically tell you what you need to do in your APM. We just tell you what we know about you in an APM, meaning that if you are in an alternative payment model that has certain requirements, you will have to either learn about that from whomever's in charge of that model or who's ever in charge of your entity, because we want to make sure that we give you the correct information, and different participation agreements are different based on the model. Next slide, please. So here again, you've logged into the APM participation status, or what we call the lookup tool, and you're looking for your eligibility information. Here we're going to tell you that the APM participation we see about you is that there's a clinic that we recognize that you have participation in. This APM entity exceeds the low volume threshold. What is the low volume threshold? Well, right there in the middle of the screen, you see where it says Medicare patients at the APM entity level. This again is comparing against the MIPS threshold, the low volume threshold for MIPS, which is you must exceed 200 patients, and then allowed charges at the APM entity level. Well, we're then going back again, making a comparison to the MIPS level low volume threshold comparison that you must exceed $90,000 in payments. So, with that said, we're going back to classifying you as a MIPS APM because of the model that you participate in. Going back just a little bit, thinking about the comprehensive list of APMs, we're then going back to tell you, based on what we know about the model you're in, and that you exceed the APM low volume threshold, which is again comparative to that in the MIPS the MIPS low volume threshold. We know that you're in the Medicare Shared Savings Program, Track 1, which tells us you classify as a MIPS APM. So again, we're just tying all this together based on what you've learned today. Next slide, please. Here again is just a quick refresher for you, the layers of APMs. We've talked a lot today about the different types of APMs. One is that there's a regular APM. That's the larger circle. So regular APM just means that it's an alternative payment model. If you really think about it, all of these are alternative payment models. The next one, the merit-based incentive payment system, alternative payment models, or what we call the MIPS APMs. What does that mean? That APM has participants that are still going to be scored under MIPS, but they do work in an alternative payment model. The next slide, not the next slide, the next bubble underneath. It's a smaller bubble. It's the advanced MIPS APMs. Well, we don't like to say that because it adds a little bit of confusion and complexity that I like to clarify very quickly. In order for me to do that, I must go underneath it to the advanced APMs. So if you see the advanced APMs sit outside of the concentric circles, it actually allows you to see that the advanced APMs are an alternative payment model, but they are advanced, meaning that they do a higher level of work and they are qualified for the 5% bonus because of the patients or payments threshold that they can achieve to become a qualifying APM participant. What does that mean? It means that if you're in an advanced APM, that's your option. You either reach the qualifying APM participant status, or your clinician could meet the partial status, or your clinician is billed will receive an adjustment through MIPS. Well, let's get back to the advanced MIPS APMs, or the combo. Here we have an advanced APM that has also the designation of the MIPS APM, meaning that if you do not meet the advanced APM status of QP and you do not meet the qualifying APM participants that reach the 5% bonus, you are then given the option, based on the fact that there is a second designation to the model of the MIPS APM side of this, that you will also receive the APM scoring standard. So the benefit there for you is if this model has both designations, because it does meet the status of an advanced APM and a MIPS APM, then the clinician is eligible for the APM scoring standard if they do not meet the QP status. If they're in an advanced APM only and they do not meet QP or partial QP status, they do not get the APM scoring standard. They only get the MIPS adjustment. That's the difference between the advanced MIPS APM and the advanced APM. Next slide, please. Where can I go to learn more? Adam, take it from here.
Well, that's a great question, and I hope you've learned plenty today walking through these slides. But if you do have additional questions, I think there's some really good starting points. If we go on to the next slide, perfect. So first, I do want to start with our Quality Payment Program website, as we've been talking about throughout our discussion today, qpp.cms.gov. If you navigate over to the website, we do have specific pages dedicated to the various parts and pieces of the Advanced Alternative Payment Model track of the Quality Payment Program. We've got pages for MIPS APMs, advanced APMs, the all-payer combination option. So highly encourage you just to navigate over to the website for some basic information, a lot of which what was covered on this discussion today, but there are some good resources there as well. And if you get to the website and you've reviewed the information, and certainly all of the resources that we have available in the resource library on advanced APMs, MIPS APMs, the scoring standards, so on and so forth, if you still need assistance, we've got plenty of help and support for you. So if you are participating in a MIPS APM, MIPS-eligible clinicians, you can certainly reach out to one of the networks that we have listed on the screen here. If you're in a larger practice, then you'll certainly want to connect with our quality innovation networks and quality improvement organizations. So that's really for practices that are, greater than or 16 or greater in terms of size, so 16 or more eligible clinicians. For our smaller practices, we do have customized support through the Small Underserved and Rural Support Initiative. That is really specific to 15 or fewer eligible clinicians. So very customized support available. Also highly recommend, again, we talked about the Quality Payment Program website, but we also have our Quality Payment Program Service Center. If we aren't able to address your question today, because I know we've got a lot of good questions coming in, recommend you reaching out to the Service Center. They're able to answer your questions related to MIPS APMs, but also if you're looking for some more scenario-focused help, that's also another really fantastic resource. Again, all of this information is available on qpp.cms.gov, so we will post the slides in about a week or two, but in the meantime, if you do need help and support, you can go to the website and find all of these options once again. Okay, moving forward, we've got about 20 minutes left in our discussion, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the operator just to let you know how to get keyed up to ask a question.
We are now going to start the Q&A portion of the webinar. You can ask questions via chat or phone. To ask a question via the phone, please dial in at 1-866-452-7887. Again, that number is 1-866-452-7887. If prompted, please provide conference ID 867-8787. Again, the ID number is 867-8787. Once you join the conference, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad to ask a question. Again, that is star 1 on your telephone keypad to ask your question. We'll pause for just a moment.
Okay, as we wait for folks to dial in, just going to address a couple of questions that we have been seeing. I know Trevi mentioned we walked through the PI scenario. If that's the promoting interoperability, if that's still unclear to folks, please let us know and we can cover that again. I do want to mention, I saw some questions just around which models were part of MIPS or considered MIPS APMs for 2019. I know the slide is a part of the deck, but also recommend, again, going to qpp.cms.gov and clicking on the MIPS APMs page. We do continually update that page with our newest models that qualify as MIPS APMs, so that information is available on the website. One other piece that I did want to flag right now, I did see some questions coming through, is the fourth snapshot for full TINs. Corey, could you talk a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, I'd like to add to your last comment. We like to be more conversational here to make sure everyone gets the full picture. So I think that there is, first of all, when you go to qpp.cms.gov, on the top you'll see MIPS APMs, and there are two different sections or two different tracks of QPP. In the drop-down, that's where you'll find the MIPS APM information. I like to also make the point that a lot of times we get questions about what's a MIPS APM or what's an advanced APM? How did you determine that? Those determinations are made based on statute, regulation, and also meeting certain criterion. So when we tell you that something is a MIPS APM, an advanced APM, or meets both designations, there's been a lot of policy work and a lot of clearance that had to happen prior to you being determined to be in a MIPS APM or an advanced APM. So we don't want you to get caught up into that part of the designation. That just helps you to figure out what work needs to be done for that model. So it does help a little bit to know that you're not coming in saying, oh, that's a MIPS APM, or I need to determine that to be an advanced APM. We've already done that work for you. We're just alerting you of what it means and why we're telling you how it's been designated. When we did user research, people wanted to know, how do we come to determine it to be such? So that's where we get that from. As it relates to the APM, we talk about two different types of APMs. We have the 10 NPI, which means that APM actually looks at not only the NPI or the clinician itself, the National Provider Identifier, but the 10 itself is the billing organization. So when you hear 10 NPI, you get this combination of the billing organization, plus we're looking at the clinician itself. So you get the combination of a model that is not considered a full 10, meaning that clinicians in that model may not always, their data may not always be specific to being added as a full model. Where a full 10, such as the Shared Savings Program, every clinician in that model, their 10, meaning their billing organization, captures that data. So in a full 10, the Shared Savings Program, we found that after August 31st, which was the last date of the third snapshot, many of the clinicians were wondering, if I join the Shared Savings Program, then am I even being considered a participant? And what we determined was many of them were not, or they were. So because there was inconsistency on the participation list, we included a policy that as of last year, if you join after August 31st, which will be September 1st, and we see you on a participation list between September 1st and December 31st, we will then determine that you are a participant in the model, but you are not eligible for QP status. QP status can only be determined based on the work you do January 1st through August 31st. So if I'm not eligible to be a QP, but I'm still operating, what does that mean for me? The benefit to you is that you will get the APM scoring standard because we will see that you're participating in a MIPS APM or in that full 10, the Shared Savings Program, as a participant. So we capture everyone there. And the benefit to you then, again, is for the fourth snapshot on December 31st, we capture everyone from September 1st through December 31st to give you recognition that you have joined the Shared Savings Program. So I hope that fourth snapshot makes a little more sense for you and gives you the benefit of the APM scoring standard outside of just a general MIPS scoring and a MIPS adjustment.
Thanks, Corey. I do want to check in on the line. Do we have any callers?
Our first question is from Kim Sweet.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my call and putting on this program. It's been very informative. I'm being new with MIPS APMs. A lot of my clients, not a lot, I had quite a few clients that when they filed their 2018 MIPS requirements, after they filed, they found out that they were actually a MIPS APM. And one of my clients, their MIPS APM did not file for them because they had already filed as MIPS. And I just was wondering, is that the way it's, I mean, can you file when you're qualified as a MIPS APM? Can you do one way or the other, or do you have to do MIPS APM? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so participants in MIPS APMs, if you have clinicians that are on a MIPS APM participation list, they will be scored as a MIPS APM participant under the APM scoring standard. So if you're on an APM participation list, you do not have the option to report to regular MIPS or report as an APM. If you're on the APM list, you will receive the APM entity score.
So what are they supposed to do? Because they have no clue that they are a part of an APM, none whatsoever. And I'm talking about 5 or 6 clients of mine have called me with the same concern. And when I look at their 2019 participation status, it says that they are just MIPS eligible and not MIPS APM, where 2018 it says that they were MIPS APM. So they're really lost and confused. And I still don't understand what's going to happen to them because they did file as MIPS, not as a MIPS APM, because they had no knowledge that they were an APM. So does that mean that they're going to be penalized with a negative adjustment amount?
No. So two things. One, you said 2019, there was no APM participation data for those same clients. We have not released any 2019 APM participation data as of yet. We anticipate doing that within the next week or so. For 2018, again, if those clinicians were on a MIPS APM participation list, they would not have to report quality, depending on the model they participate in. If it's a shared savings program, ACO, the ACO submits quality on their behalf, so we would have scored them on quality based on the web interface submission. For improvement activities, they would not have to have reported any additional data because participants in MIPS APMs automatically receive full credit under the improvement activities category. For the PI category, depending on which APM these clinicians participate in, if it's a shared savings program APM that they participate in, then their group would have needed to report PI on their behalf. So technically, they may not have to have reported any additional data outside of what's already being reported for them.
But if they did, are they covering their butts, so to say? Because like one of the clients, the APM said, we're not going to submit for you because you already did submit your MIPS, your normal MIPS for 2018. So we're not going to bother with you, even though you were identified as a MIPS APM. I guess my big concern is, are they, how are they going to be affected?
Yeah, so again, if we have them on a APM participation list, they will be scored as part of the MIPS APM, regardless if they submitted data for regular MIPS. We will use the APM and their group submissions to score them under the APM scoring standard.
Okay, thank you.
So they would not be penalized if they report it.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Let me address one of the comments that was made by Damon and also a question that came in. A lot of people are looking at the participation tool and not seeing information about their 2019 status for QP, APM participation, MIPS APM, anything about who they are as it relates to alternative payment models. There are two complications here. The first one is that when we receive data, we try to give enough time. Right now it's a 90-day run-out period, in which we actually have looked at that for 2017 and 18 for 3 months. And we found that it was allowing for us it was actually causing us to take too long to get the data to you. So now we do a 60-day run-out period, in which during that 2-month period, we can reconcile the claims and information we receive about the data you have. Being on the APM participation list, we want to make sure that the information we have is as clear as possible to make sure we have the right determination. So if you don't see that information yet, the reason being is because we want to make sure, one, that it's checked, is verified, but two, that we also have several announcements throughout the year through listservs that it does cause some confusion because the data is not updated as quickly. We are working on creating a process that allows for us to have the alternative payment model data a lot quicker. So the first announcement that we do, it is a predictive QP. So the predictive, what we do is we look at last year's January 1 through August 31st, and we say, what do we know about this person or these individuals on the alternative payment model list or the participation list? We then take a snapshot at the beginning of this year and see, are you still operating in an alternative payment model? Because we have data on you from last year that we like to make a prediction for this year. If you do what you did last year, you would be. So that predictive information is what Damon was talking about, that we've been trying to make sure we have cleared and that we have the right information. What we don't want to do is put the wrong information out and then have to retract it. Second, we then come with the first snapshot. That first snapshot will allow for us to actually tell you what we know about you from January 1st through March the 31st. We then allow for the data to run out 60 days. That 60-day time period, reconciliation, is this claim overpaid, underpaid, is it not paid, did you even see the patient, what data do we have on you? Then we actually do a calculation Do we have QP? Do we have you on a participation list? Then we put the data out there again for you to preview and be able to make estimations for your business and for your healthcare model. You then go forward to the second snapshot. Second snapshot is January 1st through June 30th. Another 60-day run-out period, and we're doing a reconciliation. Did you pay? Did you underpay? Did we overpay? What's coming back? Was it the wrong billing code? Everything, the wrong G code, whatever the case may be. And then we have the data released, and then we go for a third snapshot. Again, we're just taking these snapshots to be able to help us determine what we know about you throughout the year to give you more opportunity to make adjustments to your business or to know where you stand. We use that as just a way of communicating. The third snapshot is January 1st through August 31st. Again, a 60-day run-out period, reconciliation, and then we release that data. And then the fourth snapshot, as I explained earlier, is January 1st through December 31st, but we're really looking at September 1st through December 31st just to see if you joined a Fulton model, the shared savings program. So I hope that clarifies a little bit about why the data is not there yet. We have noticed that a lot of clinicians are asking questions, and we've done this for the last 2 years, the same situation, trying to get the data out as quickly as possible, but making sure that with more clinicians joining alternative payment models, that our information is valid and that you can actually walk away knowing that what you have there is the real deal. So we hope that answer helps a little bit. And again, apologies for any confusion, but we want to make sure we're doing the right thing by all of our clinicians and you guys as whether it be consultants or anyone working in the healthcare field.
Thank you. Do we have any other folks on the line?
Our next question comes from Lisa Segwitz.
Hi. Thanks for the webinar. I am struggling to understand all of this with promoting interoperability for the APMs. So helping as a consultant with quality insights, I'm going to ask some questions specifically for Shared Savings Program Track 1 ACOs. So from the understanding from this webinar, they could be either a MIPS or an advanced ACO. Is that correct from the slide?
No. So Track 1 is only a MIPS APM.
No, to Track 1 Plus.
Oh, Track 1 Plus. Yes, it's an advanced APM as well as a MIPS APM.
Okay. Could a Track 1 Plus ACO revert back to just a MIPS, or is it always going to be an advanced ACO?
So let me just explain for participants in APMs that are advanced APMs as well as MIPS APMs. Advanced APM participants have an opportunity to earn QP status by meeting or exceeding the QP thresholds through their participation in an advanced APM. In some instances, you may have clinicians in those advanced APMs that do not reach QP status, and as a result, they may reach a partial QP status, which allows them to determine whether or not they want to participate in MIPS or not. Or you just may have clinicians in those advanced APMs who do not reach QP status, whether full QP status or partial QP status at all. In the scenario where you have a partial QP participant who wants to participate in MIPS, or a advanced APM participant who did not reach any status that would participate in MIPS, because that APM is an advanced APM as well as a MIPS APM, the MIPS APM status allows those clinicians to be scored under the APM scoring standard. So that means they will not have to submit any additional quality data because you're already submitting through the web interface. We'll just take that data and score it for MIPS. You don't have to submit any improvement activities data because we automatically give you full credit in improvement activities as being a participant in the MIPS APM. You would only have to submit PI data, and depending on if we're talking about performance year 2018 for the Shared Savings Program, that would have to be submitted as a group. Beginning in 2019, clinicians or participants in Shared Savings Program have the option to submit PI as a group or as an individual. So because those participants that are in that MIPS APM are in a MIPS APM, they get the benefit of the APM scoring standard.
Okay, good. That's a helpful explanation. So then my next thought, for the SSP Track 1 Plus organization, if all of their participants are qualifying providers, so there's quality being submitted through the CMS web interface, no one submitting promoting interoperability, is the ACO just scored on quality now?
So are we talking about performance year 2019?
Yes.
Okay. So in that scenario, the ACO would just be scored on quality as a participant in the shared savings program. On the MIPS side, that ACO or those participants in that ACO would be exempt from MIPS. So they wouldn't receive a MIPS score at all. The quality reporting would be for their SSP participation.
And if a provider would try to report promoting interoperability, would the screen stop them because it's not necessary?
It will not stop them, but when we do final scoring, that clinician or that QP will be excluded from final scoring.
Okay.
So,
and without
let me do this, Lisa. I just wanted
to move on to some other callers.
But I wanted to give you a nugget, though. If you go to qpp.cms.gov, at the very top of the page, you will see 4 drop-downs. Well, actually 3 drop-downs and then 1 sign-in. MIPS, APMs, and About. If you go to About, and that's for everyone on the call, under About, hit the drop-down and go to Resource Library. In the middle of the page, under Resource Library, you'll see a box that says Search. In that box, you can type in the word Savings. You can type in Medicare. You can type in QPP. Just leave all of the boxes open to all and type in Savings, hit the search button, and you'll get all of the documents for the Shared Savings Program. The first one that pops up is 2019 Medicare Shared Savings Program and QPP Interactions. Every answer to your questions for this year and then going back to 2017 are all listed there under each document. We don't want to be rude, but we also want to respect time, and we also want to give an opportunity for maybe one other question. But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We're going to take one more question at this point.
Your next question is from Rebecca Days.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. So for new ACOs that are brand new and the agreement begins on July 1st of 2019, will that ACO be able to report for all the TINs under that ACO, or will those groups need to report for themselves for 2019 since the ACO didn't begin until mid-year?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yep. So there's a new ACO, and the agreement begins on July 1st of 2019 under the new pathways. Will that ACO be able to report for all the groups that joined the ACO, or will all those groups need to still report outside of the ACO since the ACO wasn't around for the full year?
We picked that ACO up for the third snapshot. Yeah. So I'll try to answer this at a high level. If you have more specific details about the question, you can submit it through the QPP Service Center, and we'll be able to provide you with a more detailed response. But if you have a new ACO, are you a participant in one of the enhanced tracks or one of the basic tracks?
I actually work with Quality Insights as well, and I was just asking just a general question because I know there are some new ACOs that are coming out with that new agreement period coming on July 1st. So it's just a general question. So I'd say probably just MIPS APM track.
Okay. So we would be able to pick that APM entity or ACO up with the third snapshot. So if there are any TINs, that are in that ACO as of the third snapshot, then those TINs will be covered, the participants in those TINs will be covered under the group submissions for PI for those particular groups or TINs.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right, folks, we are at the top of the hour. To be respectful of everyone's time, we are going to adjourn for today. Just an FYI, we do have some additional events scheduled on advanced APMs and the all-payer combination option. I saw a couple questions on that, so please be on the lookout by signing up for the listserv. We appreciate your time today, and we'll talk to you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference. You may now disconnect. Speakers, please hold the line.